Oh my God.
You call me back or something?
No.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Professor.
All right. All right. So quick announcement for you guys. So yes, it is official now. I will be teaching physio next semester. The class will be Monday and Wednesday nights. Okay, from 5:30 to officially from 5:30 to 9:30. Unofficially, I'm gonna run it kind of like I ran this one. For the winter or the spring. There's no, I don't think there's any physio in this winter session. It will be online. Okay. It will be pretty much run exactly like this class, but we'll be meeting more often. We'll have more discussion. One of the things I don't like about this class is we only met once a week, so it was hard to like really discuss things and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, there is, but it's 4 days a week. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I've never taught the winter physio, or I've never taught winter sessions anyway. Yeah. So is Monday, Wednesday, 5:30 and 9:30, and I will run it much like this class. I will record all my lectures ahead of time, and then you guys can watch the lectures, and then we'll meet for an hour to discuss it. And then, like, you know, the quizzes and exams will be kind of like this time. But honestly, I've never taught physio at company, so I don't have a set of exams or anything to do that yet. So I have to make those up as we speak. Okay. All right. Does that make sense to you guys?
So you're gonna teach physio for winter?
No, not winter, for spring.
For spring? Okay.
Yeah.
Professor, question.
Yeah.
Now, are we gonna get some sort of priority if we sign in? Because I know the waiting list to get into classes. I mean, they're giving us schedule time, so by the time our schedule appointment is due, there's no more space.
Yeah, honestly, yes. Yes. It probably won't be that bad this time around, depending on how many people are enrolled. But yeah, don't worry about it. I can always just add you guys off the waiting list and something like that. So that's not a problem. Since I already know you guys. Yeah, I have no problem doing that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
Hey, Professor.
Yeah.
I just want to give everyone a heads up that I've taken physio and I've taken micro, and I've taken a lot of science classes, and none of them are like yours. None. Professors do not take the extra initiative to help the students. So I'm just telling everyone that's listening to make it your priority to get into your class, because it's hard. These science classes are super hard.
Physio is not easy by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it isn't. But it makes it harder when the professor doesn't go through things the way you do, where it's so broad that you don't know what the heck's going to be on the exams.
Cool. All right.
Thank you, Kenya.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. So let's go through. Where is it? Final. Oh, review question. Oh. I know I'm not. Hold on one second. I can't find my lab example. There we go. All right. So let's go through this guy. Okay. All right. Let's start from bottom. It's actually easier. What is this muscle right here?
Diaphragm.
Diaphragm. Good. What is this line right here?
Oblique fissure.
The oblique fissure. Good. So, what is this fissure?
Transverse fissure.
Close, but no. Horizontal. Okay. So the right lung has 3 lobes. The left lung has 2. Okay. Superior, middle, inferior lobe, and then the left lung just a superior lobe and inferior lobe. Okay, because the lobe is missing here. There's a big thing here. What's that hole? First of all, what goes in that hole?
The heart.
The heart.
So what do you think this hole is called?
Pericardium.
No. Cardiac notch. Okay, so it forms a notch in the lung, and the heart goes there, so cardiac notch. Okay, all right. So what is this tube right here? Trachea. Good. Okay, what is this thing right here?
Larynx, is it? No.
Larynx.
Is it? So this whole thing is the larynx, but this piece of cartilage is called a thyroid cartilage. Okay, that's the only piece of cartilage that you have to know. There's actually 9 cartilages that make up the larynx, but that's the only one you have to know, because that's the one that's most important. That's the one that sticks out in males. Okay, and like the Adam's apple in males, that's the thyroid cartilage. Okay, all right. What is this ring or this in green?
Is that the epiglottis?
That's the epiglottis. Good. All right. So let's talk a little bit about epiglottis. What is this? What is the epiglottis?
Epiglottis prevents the food from getting to the through the airway passage.
Good. So more specifically, it prevents it from getting into here, which is the pharynx. Or sorry, pharynx. So food goes into the pharynx. This is the pharynx, but it's prevented from going into the larynx. Okay. Instead, it goes down here, which is the esophagus. Okay. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So let's see. Let's look at the same thing here. What is this piece of tissue?
Ovula.
Uvula.
Uvula. Good. What is that? What does that piece of tissue do?
Oh, I know it holds the tonsils, but
The tonsils are actually located up here. They function independently of the uvula, but the uvula closes them off. Like when your uvula flips up, it actually closes off your airway. So it separates the nasal pharynx from the oral pharynx.
mhm.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Have you guys like take a sip of water and started laughing, and then you like squirted water out your nose or whatever you're drinking out your nose?
Right.
Okay, so that is because your uvula isn't functioning properly. Okay, like when you're drinking, the uvula should be up, but when you're laughing, the uvula should be down. When you're trying to do both at the same time, the uvula doesn't know where to go. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you end up squirting water like up there. Okay. All right. What are these lines right here? Whoa, that's a crappy color. What are these lines right here?
Is that the vestibular fold?
Yep. Okay. These are the vocal cords. Okay. The vestibular cords are on top, and then the vocal cords on the bottom. But basically, this line is the vocal cords. Okay. All right. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. Now let's try something else. Okay. So you breathe in air through your nose. Where does it go?
Okay, do you want the whole path or just the?
The whole pathway.
Okay, the whole pathway will be nasal cavity, nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryopharynx, larynx, trachea, membronchi, lobobronchial, segmental bronchial, bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and alveoli.
Good.
Are we adding the paranasal sinuses?
No. So air is trapped there, but that's not the pathway really into your lungs. Does that make sense? Extra air gets trapped there. But yeah, it's used for like, it's used to make noise. But it's not really how you breathe. But yeah, basically the only thing I kind of, it's not wrong, but I made it much simpler. I didn't ask you guys to know all the different types of bronchioles, just that they're bronchioles. Okay, and then the alveolar ducts and alveoli, I didn't distinguish between them. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. And again, she's not wrong, but there's a primary. So the way I like to talk about these are the primary bronchi. From the primary comes the secondary bronchi, and the secondary bronchi goes to the tertiary bronchi. Does that make sense? It makes more sense in order that way. It goes from 1, 2 to 3, and then actually it goes to 4, 5, 6. But you know, we only learned the first 3. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Okay, so what is this tube right here?
Terminal bronchial.
So terminal bronchioles. Okay, so bronchioles, right? This whole thing is a bronchiole. Okay, the bronchioles, you tell them from the bronchi because the bronchioles only have smooth muscle. There's no cartilage, so only smooth muscle. Okay, what is this tube?
Pulmonary artery.
Pulmonary artery. Okay, it's a branch off the pulmonary arteries. Good. What about this tube?
That is the branch of pulmonary vein.
That's a branch of the pulmonary vein. So this is a branch of pulmonary artery. This is a branch of the pulmonary vein. Okay, remember here the colors are backwards, right? The
Yes.
deoxygenated blood runs in the artery. The oxygenated blood runs in the veins. Okay, last but not least, what are these little balls?
Alveoli.
Alveoli. Okay. All right. So that should be a really easy slide to tackle. All right. What is this thing right here?
That's the parotid gland.
Good. It's parotid, but yes. What about this one?
Submandibular.
Submandibular. And this one?
Sublingual.
Sublingual. Good. And these three are the salivary glands, right?
Yes.
Okay. This tube is
Esophagus.
esophagus. This this organ is
The liver.
Liver,
liver. This organ is
stomach,
this little green thing here,
The gallbladder.
gallbladder. This little thing here, I mean, this whole, it runs all the way back here.
pancreas,
Yes.
Pancreas. Good. Okay. So what is this C-shaped thing right here?
The duodenum.
The duodenum. Good. Okay. What is, let me see, that little thing right there?
Appendix.
Good. What is this part of the colon called?
is that the ascending or descending?
That's the secum.
That's the ascending,
Oh,
isn't it?
ascending. Uh-huh.
Ascending.
Ascending colon.
Mhm.
What is this part called?
Mhm.
So this is the liver, right? So right, so not, sorry. It can be called a right colic flexure, but most people call it the hepatic flexure.
Flexure.
Okay. All right, so it goes from right colic flexure to this thing right here, which is
Transverse colon.
transverse colon. Good. And then the transverse colon turns, and that turn is called the
It's a
Is it
fixed
the left hepatic flexure?
no. There's only one. There's only one.
Oh, I guessed.
That's good, but okay. So the liver is on this side. What's the matching organ on this side?
Is a left colic flexure of
It's the
colon.
left colic flexure. Yeah. The other term for it, which most people use, the splenic flexure.
Because it's right where the spleen is.
That's right where the spleen is.
Flexure.
Like the spleen, it should be right, literally there. Should be right there. Okay, and then here it makes a little S shape. What's the name of the S shape thing?
Descending colon.
The descending colon goes down, right? But
Mhm.
this thing ends in an S shape. What is the
Sigmoid.
Sigmoid.
Sigmoid colon.
sigmoid? Sigmoid. Sigmoid means S shape.
Mhm.
Okay, and then this is what?
The rectum?
Rectum, and then finally the
Anus.
anal canal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about valves. Okay, you know this valve right here, right? This is the epiglottis. Okay, forces food down this tract. There is a valve right here between the esophagus and the stomach.
Yes.
Okay, it's a really important valve. What's the name of that valve?
Cardiac or esophageal valve?
Yes. Okay, cardiac valve is a more common name. The technical name for it is the gastroesophageal valve. Okay, and both of those are acceptable. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
That's a really big deal because if that's one of the major problems that humans have, right? That you have acid reflux and stuff, and if you fix that problem, you can literally make $1 billion. Like it's crazy the amount of money people spend on Tums, right? Proton pump inhibitors, gastric bypass, all these surgeries, and stuff like that, just because of this malfunctioning valve.
Mhm.
Okay, there is another valve right here between the small intestine and the stomach. What's the name of that valve?
Pyloric.
Pyloric. Okay, pyloric literally means gate. Okay, so it goes. The stomach has a little gate that opens and closes, and that allows the food to go into the small intestine a little bit at a time. Okay, so pyloric valve. Okay, there is one more valve down here between the small intestine and large intestine. What is the name of that valve?
No, no,
So the last part of the small intestine is the ileum. So ileo. Ileocecal valve. Does that make sense? Between the ileum and the cecal.
cecal.
All right.
And that's between the small and the large?
Yeah. Between the ileum and the cecal.
Okay.
What was the name of the organ right before the anal canal?
I'm sorry?
The organ right before the anal canal?
Right before the rectum.
Retinal?
Rectum.
Oh, rectum. Oh, rectum. Okay, rectum.
Where the heck? Hold on 1 second. I don't know what happened to my presentation. Oh. Sorry, I accidentally closed something I shouldn't have. No. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, does that make sense to you guys? Yes?
Yes.
All right, let's go into the kidney. All right. So that's the easy stuff. What is this tube?
That is the renal artery,
Renal artery. What is this tube?
renal vein,
What is this tube?
The
uterus.
The ureter. Good. Okay. What is the outer part of the kidney called?
Is that renal cortex?
Renal cortex. Good. Therefore, the inside part of the kidney is the
Medulla?
renal medulla. Good. Okay. What are one of these triangles called?
Met in the renal medulla?
No. Well, they're part of the renal medulla, but what's each individual triangle called?
Is it
renal
a pyramid?
Renal pyramids. Good. That makes sense. So in like in a 3D, in a 2D picture, it looks like a triangle. In reality, it looks like a pyramid. So renal pyramid. Okay. In between the renal pyramids, you have these little spaces right here.
renal column,
Renal columns. Good. Does that make sense? The columns run between the pyramids.
mhm,
Excuse me, Professor.
Yeah.
Is the renal pyramid different from the papillary of a pyramid?
Yes.
Is different?
Yes, it is. And I'm getting to that right now.
Okay.
Okay. So the pyramid is this whole thing. The papilla of the pyramid is the very tip of it.
tip of it.
Um,
You see, like in this picture, the very tip of the pyramid is white. It looks like a snow-capped mountain, like the top is white.
Mhm.
The white part is the papilla.
How do you spell papilla?
Papilla.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. The tip of the renal pyramid is the renal papilla. The renal papilla is where urine actually comes out. Okay. Does that make sense to you guys? So urine comes out of here, and where does it go into next?
into the major calyx, no, the minor calyx,
Minor calyx.
minor calyx.
Okay. So a calyx is a collecting vessel. So the minor calyx, the minor calyces merge together to form the major calyx. The major calyces merge together to form the renal pelvis, and then the renal pelvis
Goes
drains.
to the,
Okay, does that make sense to you guys?
Will we need to know the urine flow as well? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's really easy, right? Renal papilla to the minor calyx, to the major calyx, to the renal pelvis, to the ureter, and then where does it go after the ureter?
The bladder,
Urinary bladder. Where does it go after the urinary bladder?
you excrete
urethra,
through the
urethra.
Urethra.
ureters. Ureters.
Right. All right. All right. So this is a nephron. So a nephron, there's a blood vessel that goes in. The
Mhm.
blood vessel that goes in is called what?
Renal artery or the afferent arteriole.
Afferent arteriole.
Mhm.
Okay. What's the one that comes out of it?
Efferent, efferent.
Efferent arteriole. Okay. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. There is also, in between the two, there's a big ball here. That big ball is called the what?
Glomerulus.
Glomerulus. Good. Okay. So the glomerulus is where things come out, where they leak out. Okay. And what catches it?
The Bowman's capsule.
Bowman's capsule. Good. It's either called Bowman's capsule or glomerular capsule. Okay. Again, either answer is correct. Okay. All right. The next thing is this little tube right here, which is
Proximal convoluted tubule.
convoluted.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, proximal convoluted tubule. It's actually not just a little wavy. It's actually very, very convoluted. It runs up. It kind of runs circles around itself. Okay, but one of the reasons why I like this picture is it simplifies everything. So proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, from the proximal convoluted tubule, you have a little U-shaped thing. That little U-shaped thing is called what?
Helen's loop. No.
Descending limb of nephron loop?
It's called a nephron loop or the loop of Henle.
Oh, got it backwards. Okay.
Okay. So again, either name is fine. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And from the loop of Henle, it goes into this part. And what happens there? Or what's that thing called?
Is it the thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle?
No, this is the thick part, right? This is the thick portion of the loop of Henle. But don't, like, I'm not going to ask you to distinguish between thin limb and thick limb at this level. You will when we get to physio because they do different things. But for now, just the loop of Henle.
Mm,
So what is this part?
that part.
Okay, let's see. Hint. Okay. What was this in the end?
So is that the distal convoluted tubule?
Yeah, yes.
Ah.
So this is proximal, right? So the
Mhm.
opposite of proximal is distal.
Okay.
So proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, what's the name of this tube?
Collecting duct.
Collecting ducts. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? All right, now that you guys know what everything is called, let's go over what everything does. Okay. All right, so first thing is this whole blood supply right here. You have an afferent arterial going in, you have efferent arterial going out, and then you have a bunch of capillaries right here. Okay, the capillaries right here is going to filter the blood.
The blood.
Okay, so whatever little, like the glomerulus has a whole bunch of little holes in it, and so whatever leaks out of those holes ends up in Bowman's capsule. Okay.
You said it ends up in the glomerular capsule, right?
Yeah, glomerular capsule. Yes. Okay. Okay. Does that make sense? And that is actually a lot of fluid. Okay. Honestly, you make about 700 liters of filtrate a day. Okay. Most of it gets reabsorbed. Okay. And most of it gets reabsorbed right here in the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay. The proximal convoluted tubule reabsorbs most of the water. It reabsorbs all of the sugars, all the amino acids. Okay. And most of the salt as well.
Salt.
Okay. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yes.
The next thing here is the loop of Henle.
Mhm.
Okay. The loop of Henle only absorbs two things: water and salt.
Water.
Okay.
Is that the part that affects the blood pressure?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
The next part is the distal convoluted tubule. The distal convoluted tubule, if you have enough water, if you're drinking enough water, it doesn't do anything. Okay? If you're not drinking enough water and you're thirsty, the distal convoluted tubule absorbs more water back. So you end up peeing less. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Professor, can you say that again, please?
Yeah. Okay. Your distal convoluted tubule, if you have sufficient water levels, it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
But if you're dehydrated or thirsty, it reabsorbs more water, so more water goes back into your bloodstream.
Okay.
Okay, so it keeps
Yeah.
you more hydrated, so you end up peeing less.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. All right. The last thing is this tube right here. That's the collecting duct.
Mhm.
Okay, so when stuff hits the collecting duct, it is technically urine.
Please.
Okay, so out here you filter it in the nephron. It's technically called filtrate because I'm still reabsorbing things. I'm still pumping things into the filtrate to get rid of them. I'm purposely pumping excess sodium or excess hydrogen into these tubes. I'm also pumping drug metabolites into these tubes so I can flush them out of my system. But once it hits the collecting duct, nothing changes, and therefore it's urine.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense? The collecting ducts basically all collect together, and they all end up together, and they end up coming out the renal papilla. Like all the connecting ducts end up together at the renal papilla. Okay, does that make sense?
They end up where? They end up.
They end up right there, right at the
Okay.
renal papilla.
Okay.
All the connecting ducts will end up right there. Okay, so they all merge into one another and then they all end up right there. So whatever comes out of the collecting ducts is urine.
What is it before the collecting duct?
Filtrate.
Filtrate, okay.
So filtrate is technically what you're still readjusting. Okay, you reabsorb 99% of everything you filter out. Okay. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes.
Yes.
So, the nephron, let me see if you guys paid attention. There are two types of nephrons. You guys remember the two types of nephrons?
Mm. Glumephoride. Glumephoride.
Is it the cortical nephron and the juxtamedullary nephron?
Yes. Okay. Cortical nephrons and the juxtamedullary nephrons. The cortical nephrons are smaller, shorter. Okay, and they have a short loop of Henle. The juxtamedullary nephrons, they have a very, very long loop of Henle. Okay, the longer the loop of Henle, the more water you can reabsorb. Okay, does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
The longer the juxtamedullary nephron, the more juxtamedullary nephrons you have, the more water you can reabsorb. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? So not like humans or anything, right? But you have like animals that live in the desert and they don't have a lot of access to water, and so they have mostly juxtamedullary nephrons because it helps them reabsorb water and contain water loss. Okay, humans are actually rather bad at that. We only have like 15% juxtamedullary nephrons. Okay.
So is it because the cortical nephrons only go certain distance into the medulla versus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Their loop of Henle is a lot shorter, so they're worse at reabsorbing water.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, we haven't touched the reproductive system yet, so I'll leave those two alone. Okay. Bladder. Okay. What is that triangle?
Uretic orifice?
Nope. That's the-
Trigone? Trigone?
Trigone.
A trigone of bladder gut. Trigone.
Okay. So the trigone, tri means
Three.
three. So there are three openings. 1, 2, 3. So what is that?
Urethral opening?
Yep. And what about these guys?
Those are the
Uretic orifices.
Nope, that's a so you're in. Okay, yeah. So yes, so there are openings to the ureters.
Right.
Okay, does that make sense?
Mhm.
So why is this area so important?
Because it's going to filter out the urine.
Well, actually no, because it's already urine.
for the urine empties out too.
Okay.
You could excrete it out.
Okay. So in the trigone, this is where UTIs tend to persist.
Mm,
Okay. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So this area, not the rest of the bladder actually. The epithelium and the rest of the bladder is a little bit different. So it's harder for them to persist there. But here, UTIs tend to persist.
Did you say UTI is under process or what?
Yeah, they tend to. If you have a UTI, this is where all the bacteria tend to hang around here.
Okay.
All right, we haven't covered these guys yet. I've covered this one. Okay. This is another really simple one. So what is this in here?
That is the adrenal gland.
No, the adrenal gland would be right there. Kidney right there.
The spleen.
The spleen.
The spleen.
Okay. What is this gland right here?
Thymus.
Thymus. Yeah. Okay. And last but not least, what are these little bean-shaped things right here?
Lymph nodes, axillary lymph nodes.
Okay. So lymph nodes. Okay.
Is that the mammary?
Mammillary.
So these are usually the axillary. The mammillary ones, I don't think they drew them here, but there's usually like some stuff around here. But these are usually they're called the axillary. And then, okay, cervical lymph nodes, and then the inguinals are right here. Okay, does that make sense? No, but all I care is that you know that they're lymph nodes and stuff. Okay. All right, clear.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the purple one is spleen, right?
Yes. All right, what is this thing right here?
Which one?
Pituitary gland. Pituitary.
What?
Posterior pituitary gland.
Posterior pituitary. Good. What are the two hormones that come out of the posterior pituitary?
Shoot.
Pituitary, the GH and the FSH.
Nope.
No, that's comes from the anterior.
Yep. Those come from the anterior pituitary.
Let's forget that.
So it's
Dang it.
Would that be the adrenaline and the cortisol? No.
No.
oxytocin, ADH.
Oxytocin
Pitocin. That's what it was.
and ADH. Okay. So the other name for ADH, which probably makes more sense, is vasopressin. Okay. So what does oxytocin do?
It contracts the uterus and it helps with the milk production.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's also known as the love hormone because it causes attachment, like between mother and child, or mother to child. Okay.
It's also secreted through the skin, right?
No,
No, not at all.
not at all. Oxytocin is secreted in the hypothalamus. It causes chemical changes in the brain to cause you to bond to the child.
Professor, does it facilitate when a woman is in labor too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So those two things have been linked together, right? Because the woman is doing all this painful pushing and you know, in labor and bleeding, and it will be, if she didn't end up loving the child, then it will be, kind of like, why am I doing this? Like, so that's why. So the two things are actually linked. Same thing with breastfeeding. Like, if you're not secreting oxytocin, then you wouldn't want to breastfeed. You wouldn't want to waste your resources on the baby. So like, that's what the oxytocin is for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Is-
It's attachment.
Is that why all mothers think their babies are cute?
Yeah. Even though we all know that's not true. No. Okay. So, ADH, okay, anti-diuretic hormone,
Yes.
okay, otherwise known as vasopressin. Anti-diuretic hormone makes you pee more, okay. So, sorry, anti-diuretic makes you reabsorb more water into your body. Okay, diuretic makes you want to pee more. So anti-diuretic prevents you from peeing more. So you're reabsorbing more water back into your system. Okay, so you're making less urine. The part I said about the distal convoluted tubule reabsorbing more water, that's under control of ADH. ADH causes you to reabsorb more water. Okay, and keep it. Okay, if you reabsorb more water, that water ends up in your blood. Therefore, you increase blood pressure. Okay, so vasopressin, basal blood vessel pressin pressure. Okay, so ADH increases blood pressure. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
So blocking this pathway is actually one of the ways of reducing blood pressure. Okay. All right. So does that make sense to you guys? Where do you not? So they give you Pitocin if Pitocin is just synthetic oxytocin. So if they're trying to induce labor, then they give you Pitocin. If the labor is already ongoing, then they don't do that. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. I've been in both situations. So like the first one wasn't induced, the second one was. So all right. More new stuff. Where am I? No. Here's this folder. Review. Okay. 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 So let's go through all these hormones and you can tell me what gland produces them and what they do. Okay. So estrogen.
Estrogen. Ovaries, and it controls periods, cholesterol, and helps with the bone health.
Okay. All those things are true, but that's not the major function of estrogen. So what's the major function of estrogen?
Helps control the menstrual cycle.
That's a secondary thing, but the primary thing of estrogen is for female sex characteristics.
It's for what? Female what?
Female secondary sex characteristics. Causes you to grow breasts, hit puberty, have menstrual cycles, like, does that make sense? Like all the secondary female sex characteristics, hips, stuff like that. Okay, like smoother skin, less body hair, etc., etc.
So in the test, if we put one of the control periods, cholesterol, or you're looking for more specific?
Yeah, the cholesterol thing is not really only estrogen,
Okay.
but the other ones are fine. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next one, testosterone.
Testes, and it
The
controls
test-
male sexual characteristics.
Okay.
Promotes the formation of sperm and
Right. It's used in formation of sperm. No, but testosterone also encourages muscle gain, right? What else?
muscle mass,
Facial hair, stuff like that. So, you know.
the muscular mass.
Sperm.
Okay. All right. Growth hormone.
It's secreted by the anterior pituitary gland.
Good. What does it control?
It controls your growth.
What's that?
Okay. All right.
What's that?
Growth hormone. It controls growth. Like
Okay.
it makes like in children it makes you grow taller. Okay. In adults, it helps you recover from exercise. It helps stimulate muscle growth. Okay. That's why people cheat with it, right? That's why people like drug themselves with it. Okay. Okay. Follicle hormone and luteinizing hormone. That we'll save for next week because it deals with reproductive system, which we're not really there yet. Okay. ACTH. What does that do?
Produces
Okay. First of all, where does it come from?
it comes from the anterior pituitary gland.
Yeah. It comes from that.
Cortisol and the epinephrine.
Cortisol. Just cortisol.
Oh, so just
ACTH doesn't really stimulate epinephrine very much, if at all. It stimulates cortisol and mineral corticoids. It stimulates the adrenal cortex, not the adrenal medulla.
But we need to know the cells that produce each
No.
one. No.
Like the only cells that you need to know produce what are the beta cells and the alpha cells in the pancreas.
Okay.
Okay, because that's really important. With relationship to diabetes and stuff like that. So, okay. So cortisol, what does that do? First of all, where is cortisol produced?
The
Is it adrenaline?
A little bit more specific than adrenal,
adrenal cortex.
adrenal cortex. Okay, and then what does it do?
It's a stress hormone.
Stress hormone. Good. Okay, but I need you guys to be a little bit more specific than stress hormone. What type of stress?
Helps your body cope with stress. So
Right.
if you're
That
injured or something,
Good. Okay. So that is long-term stress.
long-term stress.
Does that make sense? There's two types of stress. There's a short-term stress, which lasts like a minute, and then there's a long-term stress, which lasts days, weeks, months.
And
Okay?
that's part of the fight or flight.
No, the fight
Not
or
part of
flight is the short-term stress.
short term. Okay.
Does that make sense? Like you can only run so long for so far. So short-term stress,
Coming in.
right? If you were running away from life, you're not counting it, you're
The
dead.
black binder.
Short-term stress. Okay. All right. TSH.
The anterior pituitary gland
Pituitary. And what's the function?
controls your metabolic rate.
Close but no cigar.
What?
Is the thyroid stimulating hormone?
Yes, the thyroid stimulating hormone. Therefore, the function of thyroid stimulating hormone is
Production of thyroid.
All right.
production, increases production of thyroid hormone. Right? Stimulates the thyroid. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's not really to, it can increase metabolism and stuff, but actually the really weird thing is one of the ways that we know your body has low levels of thyroid hormone, that you're not producing enough thyroid hormone, is if you have elevated levels of TSH.
Well, probably because of the hypothyroidism and then the hyperthyroidism. And it would be the control.
You actually have elevated levels of TSH, but
Yes,
you have low levels of thyroid hormone.
got it.
How you tell your thyroid is not working.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Brendan.
Can you repeat that one?
Brendan. Next one down. Oh.
It,
I should need.
it's in the kidney, and it regulates the blood pressure and also regulates aldosterone production.
Good. Very good. Perfect. And that's the perfect answer. It regulates aldosterone production, which then in turn regulates blood pressure. Okay. The renin is secreted by the kidney, and so it measures your kidneys measure the amount of blood pressure you have, and if it's too low, then it secretes renin. Renin will increase will trigger a pathway called the RAA pathway, renin angiotensin aldosterone pathway, which will then increase your blood pressure. Okay, adrenaline is produced by what?
It's by the adrenal gland.
Good, but the adrenal what? What part of the adrenal gland? The adrenal medulla. Okay.
No, medulla.
Yeah, the adrenal medulla, and that is the short-term stress hormone. Right. That's the one. That is the fight or flight response. Okay. Insulin is made by the. This
Pancreas.
is the only one you have to know what cells make it. So pancreas, but you have to know that it's the beta cells in the pancreas. Okay. And what does it actually do?
Lowers the blood sugar and helps metabolize of glucose, protein, and fat.
Yes. And the glucagon is secreted by the
Pancreas, and it raises the blood sugar.
good. So the alpha cells in the pancreas, right? Insulin and glucagon are the only
The
ones.
glucagon rate. No, it does. It does.
All right. Does that make sense? All the other ones, I don't care which cells.
Yeah.
Insulin and glucagon are going to be the beta cells and the alpha cells. Okay. All right. The parathyroid hormone will control calcium. The thyroid hormone metabolism. Okay. Progesterone. We'll skip progesterone for now. But progesterone is the ovaries, and it controls gestation, birth. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. These we've all been through. Okay. Okay, so one last thing you guys to make sure you guys understand is, okay. Where am I going? Lectures. This is back. Okay. So I want you guys to understand this part right here, because this is actually a critical thing. Okay, so all digestion, okay, ends up here. Okay.
Sorry, Professor, you're getting cut off. Somebody's moving paper.
Okay. It's okay. Okay. So everything ends up here. Okay. This is where the most important part of digestion occurs. Okay. In the duodenum. So here's the duodenum. Okay. Here is the liver and gallbladder. The liver and gallbladder produces bile. Okay. Bile helps to emulsify fat. By emulsify, it means to mix together. Okay. So it emulsifies fat, and it comes through into the small intestine through this little hole here. Okay, this little hole is a really important little hole called the major duodenal papilla. Okay, the reason why it's such an important little hole is because both the bile and the pancreatic juice from the pancreas all come through that hole. Okay, does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Okay, so if you clog up that hole, that becomes a big problem. So like the pancreas produces enzymes to help digest the food coming down. The gallbladder and the liver produces the bile to help emulsify, to mix up the fat. So by the time it goes through there, it is done digesting. And the rest of the small intestine is mostly absorbing the nutrients. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Quick question. So
Yes.
what happens to the people without a gallbladder?
The people without a gallbladder, they should not be eating fatty foods, but the liver actually produces enough fresh bile to actually digest everything. Does that make sense? The gallbladder, the job of the gallbladder is to take the bile that's being made when you're resting and concentrate it. So when you squirt it out, it's not a concentrated burst. But your liver actually produces bile and produces enough of it to compensate. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. One last thing that's definitely on the test is the small intestines. Okay. So make sure you understand what these things are. Okay. Because one of the problems people encounter is the inability to absorb nutrients, and that's the celiac disease and a couple other diseases that I'm blanking off the top of my head right now. But there's a lot of diseases where you can't absorb nutrients, and basically it's because of failures of the microvilli. But the other things here are also important to help absorb food. Does that make sense? So most of the important part of the small intestine is to absorb all the nutrients into your body, because until they're in your body, they're not really useful. Okay, does that make sense? Celiac disease, that's the word I was looking for. Okay. All right, does that make sense to you guys? Yes. All right.
Professor?
Yeah.
Now, for the trace the path of a molecule of urine through the nephron, would that be the blood vessel of kidney? Is that the pathway there?
So that is the nephron. So the glomerulus to the proximal convoluted tubule to the Bowman's capsule to the distal convoluted tubule to the collecting duct. That's the nephron. Does that make sense?
It's different from so it wouldn't start from the aorta, then the renal artery and so
No,
forth?
no, no. So
No.
that's not the nephron, right? The nephron is. Oops. Right, the collecting the Bowman's capsule to the proximal convoluted tubule here, to the loop of Henle, to the distal convoluted tubule, to the collecting duct. Does that make sense?
Okay. So it'd be just those four, that's the path?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's no more blood vessels and stuff on like halfway like that on the test, right? We're past that part. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right.
So, Professor, so like you said, no blood flow. Are we to know the blood flow into this nephron, into the urinary, or this is just the way the question is going to be, or I don't know how to put it. But there's going to be a part to like for us to know the flow of urine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So okay.
The urine is simple, right? It goes from the collecting ducts to the renal papilla to the minor calyx to the major calyx to the pelvis, and then urinary bladder to urethra, and then out the body.
Okay. So no trace of the parts or traces or paths way of blood flow, nothing like that.
No, there's no more blood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I can put it back if you want me to.
No, there is.
All right. Any other questions? All right, cool. Then I will see you guys bright and early on Saturday. Bye, everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you.